series of videos on the Elder Scrolls Legends. Coming at you today with new recording software, new microphone setup. Hopefully that fixes some of the quality issues that we saw in the last videos. It's just in time because this is the last of the introductory videos before I really get into playing through the story mode, which I'm looking forward to. But we have one thing left to do first. In this video, I intend to cover deck construction. It's the last thing that we have to do to kind of complete our intro to the game. And we began in video 3 with a couple of case studies. We looked at two of the decks. We looked at this Alduin's Apocalypse deck and this Imperial Might deck. So you'll recall that Alduin's Apocalypse was a dragon tribal deck that kind of survived to the late game using the guard mechanic and then cast big dragons, while Imperial Might was a go-wide token strategy that spammed the board with little creatures and used anthem effects to make them strong and allow them to win the game. What we paid particularly close attention to last time was that both decks used yellow cards, that is cards with the willpower attribute, these cards, and purple cards, cards with the endurance attribute, these cards. And we want to use that understanding to kind of act as a jumping off point to explore deck construction in TESL. So at this point, you'll probably have noticed that there are 5 card attributes in the game. There's the red cards with the strength attribute, the blue cards with the intelligence attribute, the yellow cards are willpower, the green cards agility, and the purple cards endurance. Each attribute obviously has some sort of associated philosophy. The strength cards tend to prioritize aggression. You'll often see creatures like the Greystone Ravager here with considerably higher attacking power than defense, which reward you for deciding how combat plays out, reward you for attacking. Red key mechanics are things like charge, which allow the creature to attack the second it comes into play, or breakthrough, which allow creatures to deal damage even after they have been blocked. And red also gets a lot of items. Intelligence, conversely, is a lot more about giving you options right out of your hand. So we see all the direct damage spells in the blue cards in intelligence. So Firebolt, a spell that allows you to do 2 damage directly to any creature, whether it's being guarded or not, is a blue spell. We also see in blue a lot of creatures that care about how you play your actions. So like this Crystal Tower Crafter gets stronger every time you play an action. Key mechanics in blue are things like Ward, which prevent your opponents from dealing damage in combat, and things like Shackle, which stop your opponents from attacking. So it's all about kind of establishing board control in a more temporary sense. It's a bit of a tempo color. You could easily compare it to the intersection of blue and red spells in Magic the Gathering, for example. Willpower, the yellow, is probably most closely compared to white, or maybe even white-black in Magic. It's a color that's capable of going wide and dominating the board with a large number of creatures. It's a color that often gains life and cares about gaining life. Its major mechanics include things like Drain, which allows you to gain life when damage is dealt, and token production. In general, you find more cards with smaller attacking power and larger defense in yellow compared to what you would find in something like red. Green, or agility, is the aggro color. It has the lowest to the ground actions, a lot of 0, 1, and 2 cost spells. And it has creatures that tend to grow stronger when you play them early and then meet some effect. So for example, this Daring Cutpurse is kind of an archetypical green card. Whenever it hits an opponent and deals damage, its power and toughness both increase. Green's critical mechanics are things like Pilfer, rewards for hitting the enemy, and again, things like Drain that we saw in yellow. Finally, Endurance is the most strictly defensive color. You're likely to see a lot of creatures with larger toughnesses than power in Endurance. You see a lot of guards in Endurance. You see a lot of abilities to kind of deal with opponents' creatures regardless of their size. So a lot of creatures with a lethal ability and only 1 point of attacking power. So playing up maybe the intersection of black and green in MTG, big butts, death touch, just kind of all around gearing up for the late game. To support that, most of the ramp is found in Endurance, cards that are going to increase your max magicka in one way or another, like this Hist Speaker, or probably the most played Endurance card, this Tree Minder. So ways that allow you to get to the late game and then payoffs for being there. So those are the 5 factions, the 5 attributes in TESL. You might think, because of this 5 faction system, that the game has a lot in common as far as deck construction goes with Magic the Gathering, or Hex, or Force of Will, or other games that use a 5 faction system. But actually, that's not at all the case. One thing that we really need to draw attention to is the fact that when you look at the casting cost of these red cards, they are just expressed as a single number. Critically, you don't need red mana or red energy or some sort of devotion to red in order to play red cards. There's no specific resource that makes it easier or more difficult to play red cards. Likewise, there's no blue mana or blue loyalty or blue magicka. Nothing of that sort. So, really, you might think that the best deck in TESL would be created by just taking the best card from each of the colors and kind of smashing it together to make a sort of 5 faction monstrosity. After all, in a game like Magic, the reason that you don't play all 5 colors is that the mana system restricts your ability to put a consistent 5-color deck together. And there's no such restriction in TESL. I should just be able to maximize my versatility by taking options from as many colors as possible and putting them into my deck. What actually happens in practice in TESL when I go to build a new deck is that the moment I've included cards from any 2 factions, any 2 attributes, for example, I put a red card and a blue card together, I lock myself out of the other 3 factions. So now that I've chosen a red card and a blue card, a strength card and an intelligence card, I can't play willpower. I can't play endurance. I can't play agility. I can only play red, blue, and neutral cards, as well as multicolor cards that are both red and blue. So instead of working on the basis of a restrictive mana system, TESL works on the basis of a restricted card pool. And in this sense, deck construction is much more like Hearthstone or Duelist than it is like MTG or Force of Will. In particular, when I take 2 colors, when I choose red and blue, really what I'm doing is implicitly deciding on the class I'm going to play. And the game recognizes this. It actually assigns class names to each 2-color combination. If you look over in the top right corner here, you'll see that I've been noted to be a battle mage based on my choice of red and blue. If I had instead chosen to combine strength and willpower cards, I would be in the Crusader class. If I had instead chosen to combine strength and agility cards, I'd be in the Archer class. And if I had instead chosen to combine strength and endurance cards, I would be in the Warrior class. So 10 classes, 10 2-color combinations, leading to 10 different card pools you can use to construct a deck. This is the base system from Hearthstone, of course. You pick a class, that class has an associated card pool, and you build your deck out of that card pool. The major difference in TESL compared to Hearthstone or Duelist is the degree to which card pools necessarily overlap. Because if I'm the warrior, if I'm playing red and purple cards, there are only very, very few cards that I have exclusive access to. There's only 2 cards in my entire collection that are warrior exclusive. Most of the cards in my warrior deck are either going to be strength cards, and then I'm going to share those with the crusader and the archer and all the other classes that use red, or they're going to be purple cards, and then I'm going to share those with all the classes that use purple. So there's an enormous amount of overlap between the card pools of various classes. This might lead to a situation where the classes feel a little bit samey, where it's hard to differentiate, for example, between the warrior, the red and purple class, and say the green and purple class, the scout. After all, red and green are both aggressive colors. If you combine them with endurance, how much different could the result possibly be? And the answer is actually quite a bit. The developers have done a very good job of making sure that each 2-color combination, each class, does end up feeling rather unique. And that's because the specific intersection of the red and blue cards is often kind of characterized by its own mechanic. So if I am combining red and blue, I tend to notice that red has a lot of items, like this steel scimitar and this bone bow here, as well as creatures that care about items, like this Rihad horseman. And similarly, if I go to intelligence, I'll find a lot of cards that deal with items. Daggers in the Dark gives me free items, Crown Quartermaster gives me free items, and then creatures that, once again, care about the fact that I have a lot of items. Like, for example, where's the guy I'm looking for? This Dragonstar Rider here. So there's an intersection between the red and the blue cards of a focus on items that doesn't exist in any other 2-color pair, which leaves the red and blue combination as the combination most associated with the use of items. And this is really cool because that doesn't exactly define an archetype. There are more aggressive item decks, more mid-rangey item decks, more controlling item decks. It just says that all item decks are going to be in this Battle Mage class. And if I look at any other 2-color combination, I tend to find important facets of the overlap that kind of define the class, but leave room for many different archetypes. So if we go back to the combination of willpower and endurance, for example, we note that the kind of major thing that willpower and endurance have in common is a tendency to kind of dominate the board in one sense or another, to have more creatures out than your opponent does. The willpower side of things gets this done by playing a lot of creatures at once, by kind of going wide. And the endurance side gets this done by having the most efficient creatures overall. So the combination of yellow and purple is a combination that's looking to dominate the board. That can be a more aggressive sort of domination in the Go Wide Tokens deck that we saw, or a more controlling sort of domination in the Dragon Tribal deck that we saw. A huge range of archetypes within that overall strategy. And this is a difficult thing to balance, but in my experience, the developers of TESL have done a pretty good job ensuring that the decks that you play all kind of feel like they belong in the class they're in, so that there's definitely something it feels like to be a battle mage or a crusader or a scout, but there's still a wide variety of options available within those classes. And it just makes for a very interesting overall experience for deck construction. Alright, so that is my piece on that, and that kind of brings to a close this introductory section on the game. In the next videos that I do, I'm actually going to start playing the story mode, and hopefully that'll be a good opportunity to kind of bring this all together and give you a chance to actually see deck construction in action. But we'll talk about that more in the next video. For now, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later.